before we start, I just want to mention our partners for this webinar. So UCL is our partner again for this webinar. They have been very supportive of this venture and have partnered with us on several webinars so far. So before we start, there's a couple of quick videos that we need to play. So let's just move on to that, right?
Because the struggle is real. Because the hustle keeps you up. Because the passion keeps you going. With the partnership between Monash College and UCL, now a premier education isn't just a pipe dream. You can now choose what you want to study and where you want to be in life. Call us now.
So that was Monash, but UCL also has UCLan partnered with them. So we're going to have a small video on them as well.
What I would say about UCL is that all partners care about the academic experience, and that is very, very strong at UCL.
Right. So until Hans joins, I think we can actually start. So I think everyone already met Radha. She has been with us for quite a few webinars as well. And she's also a teacher and instructor. So she also has some expertise in navigating the online world when it comes to students, right? Because she has also been doing online classes as far as I know. So she's going to be your moderator today. Radha, you can take the stage now.
Right. Thank you very much, Parami. A very good evening, a very good afternoon, I would rather say, because it's still 4 o'clock. A very good afternoon to all of you out there. Welcome to Guard Up, a webinar organized by Chokolaate magazine and sponsored by UCL. So the area of discussion for today is, as all of you know right now, it's online safety. So before we get into the discussion, let me just introduce to you the topic for today, just brief you on the topic for today just a little bit. So this topic, the topic of online safety and security, has got a lot of attention these days. It's out there on headlines pretty much. And even this particular platform we are using right now is all over international headlines. I think everyone would agree with that. And in terms of local problems, online issues, about a week and a half ago, I heard on online news that there was this ransom virus that's currently spreading throughout our country as well. So there's a lot of online issues going on. There's a lot of hacking, a lot of cyber crimes, a lot of cyber exploitations, and so many. So I think in a situation like this, both you and I, we should be well informed about what kind of online issues are out there. And most importantly, I think we should also know how to protect ourselves from these kind of online issues. So that's the aim, that's the goal of organizing this webinar, and that's why we chose this topic for today. It's a very timely topic. And to talk about this topic today, we have a panel of 4 professionals. Well, at the moment, we only have 3 on board with us. So as a formalities, let me just take a minute or 2 to introduce to you the panelists for today. Our first panelist is Hannah Wells. She's the Deputy Principal of British School in Colombo. Hi, Hannah. A very good afternoon to you. Our second panelist is Devaka Perera. He's an IT and computer science professional and is also a specialist in branding and web design. Welcome on board, Devaka.
Thank you.
And our third panelist for today is Dr. Dhananjay Kulkarny. He's currently the Dean of Academic Affairs at UCL. A warm welcome to you as well.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Radha.
Okay, so we actually have one more panelist, and that's Hans Bilimoria. He'll be joining with us shortly, but I think we are good to get started with today's discussion. Before we get started with a little bit about how this webinar is going to proceed, so that all of you out there who are watching us right now would have an idea as to how we are going to approach this topic today. So we have 3 main rounds to our webinar. in the first round, we'll be talking to you about some of the existing online issues. And in the second round, we'll be talking to you about how we can protect ourselves from such issues. And the third round is going to be a Q&A session. So whatever questions that come up from you out there, the panelists will be answering them in the Q&A round. So having said that, if you do have any questions, please send them in. We are glad to tackle them. We'll be tackling them towards the end of this webinar. Okay, so I think we're good to get started. Hannah, I'd like to open up this discussion with you first of all. My question to you is regarding online learning. Could you brief a little bit about what online learning is? First of all, what is this concept of online learning? What are the advantages as well as disadvantages of this? Could you brief us a little bit about this first of all?
Yeah, sure. We were quite lucky at the British school. One of the things we felt probably more prepared than some other places. We'd already begun our BYOL, our Bring Your Own Laptop scheme in August 2019. So we were quite well positioned already in terms of children having devices in 4 year groups, which really, really helped us out. We'd already also been using, we're a Microsoft school. We've already been using Microsoft Teams for 3 years now. And so staff had a really, really good knowledge of that, and that really has helped us an awful lot as well. So in terms of our online learning, we're using Teams, we're using it to set assignments, we're feeding back on assignments, we're using the video call function in Teams as well. And you can now see up to 9 children at a time, which is much better than it was. It was just 4 at the beginning, which is why so many people I think are using Zoom. But in terms of Teams security, for us, it's a much, much more secure system than something like Zoom. And that obviously gives everybody peace of mind. For us as well, we wanted to try to not compromise our pedagogical approach that we have at the British school as well, as much as possible. We don't want children just to be talked at for an hour. We don't want to just take them through a worksheet online, because that's not what we would do in school. So teachers, I think the best thing that's come out of, well, there are 2 things that I think have been good about lockdown. The first one is that teachers have been super creative, and my teachers have been just amazing. I've been absolutely astounded at the new technology that they've learned, the creative ways that they found to engage the students in their learning in similar ways to they would in school. And the other thing, I think it's given families an opportunity to be together. I think parents know a lot more about what the children are learning and what they're doing in school, which I think for some parents that's caused a lot of stress, but it's also brought families together. And I think that's been a really, really special thing for lockdown. Lots of people for the first time have had their whole family together for a few months. So that has to be something quite special. But it doesn't come without its stress. I'm sure especially the parents of our youngest children have had a really, really tough time, because some of them are trying to work and help their children engage in their learning as well. So our parents have been amazing, as well as our students. But I think online learning, and that, making sure that people are safe online, it's all about education. It's making sure that we work as a partnership, not just as a school, but with parents, with children, in the education of how children can stay safe online. We can do as much as we can as a school to make sure children and parents are educated, but we're not physically in the homes with the children. So we need everyone to work together as a partnership. So really, that's how online learning has been for us. We've tried to keep things as similar as possible to what children would expect in school. And we've really tried. The hardest thing I think teachers have found is where in the classroom you'd be able to support groups of children, either in terms of challenging them further or supporting them a bit more. That's been much harder in the online world. So we've got teachers calling small groups of children. You can't do that in a Zoom session where you're talking to 25 children at once. That's very, very hard to do. So we've learned a lot along the way. And everyone's done a really great job, but Teams has been great for us because we knew it so well already.
All right, okay, great. Hannah, because the topic for today is online safety, could you also tell us what kind of measures has British School taken to ensure the safety, of students' privacy and their security?
Yeah, and that's a much harder question because we're doing everything remotely. The great thing about Teams is that every child has their own password, so it's much more secure than something like Zoom, because you can just log in, anyone can just log into Zoom. There are safety measures you can take, but it's not like a secure system like Microsoft Teams, which is why we've chosen to use that. The children who have brought their laptops into school to be configured for the BYOL program, all of them have content filtering software on their laptops that works at home as well as in school. If parents haven't wanted that, we haven't been able to give that same functionality, but we also did a lot of information sharing with parents about antivirus software, how to stay safe online, the websites to use. We use a curriculum called Common Sense Media Curriculum, which kind of goes hand in hand with the English national curriculum in terms of how to keep children safe online, but there's also lots and lots on there for parents as well. So we try to kind of push parents towards looking at those things to help educate themselves, but also trying to support the parents by telling the children what they need to be doing as well. We have a whole section on our website, which is a BYOL section, which also has an entire section just on keeping children safe online at home. So whereas we can't necessarily say we can give content filtering and have that safeguarding software in the home remotely, we can help educate children and families about what they can do to protect their children.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Hannah. It was quite informative. Moving on to Dr. Dhananjay. I actually have two questions for you. Let me just get started with the very first one. So just like schools have taken into online platforms, we see how universities have also taken into online platforms. In the context of UCL, have you already started online lectures? And if you have, how has it been going so far for UCL?
Thanks for the question, Radha. I'm just going to take 1 minute before I say anything, Radha, to give a big shout out and a heartfelt thank you to all the people who are at the front lines. And because of this, we are organizing webinars and so forth. These are the people who are fighting the COVID-19 and keeping us safe. So I think it's only right for us to say a big thank you. This includes the healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, and everybody who's in the hospital, the people cleaning the streets, the garbage collectors, people disinfecting the airports and offices, our delivery folks who kept the food lines going even when we were in lockdown, the tribe forces, police, army, navy, who have stepped in and they have kept the law and order in the middle of this pandemic. Also community-driven efforts just to keep the needy, healthy and older folks being taken care of. The media, of course, for bringing us the news from abroad and here, to making sure that we know what's happening around. And last but not the least, the parents and teachers. And it's a very important and valid topic that you have brought in today, is about online teaching, especially teachers, for keeping the education services alive during this pandemic period. The teachers had to quickly readjust their ways of teaching, learn the environment around themselves, keep the students engaged as much as possible. It's not an easy task, and I work with about 40 teachers and I see what's going on every day. So I would like to salute all these teachers who are listening in fact, and if we have anybody who is within our families or who we know who are at the front lines, including teachers, I think we should in person say a thank you or even a phone call. I think that will go a long way to everybody who has helped us survive through this pandemic. Coming back to your question, Radha, I can echo the same sentiments as Hannah is saying. Of course, at the school level, I think all our schools deal with a smaller or a younger age group. We deal with mostly students who are 16, 17, 18, 19 or 20. So 16 to 20, you can say our age group. So we have a slight advantage that they could take measures or already familiar with how to use internet. And sometimes they're even better than us. We are, I think, close to 3 months now that we have been using the virtual classes. And I can remember about somewhere in mid-March when suddenly the Sri Lankan government took the measure to impose curfews. We had very little time to make a quick turnaround and get all our services online. But thanks to a very dedicated team of teachers who work at UCL and I'm sure in other schools, we were all committed to bring our expertise together And within a couple of days, I would say within 2 to 3 days, we were fully online. We teach about 75 different subjects, so it's not an easy task, but everybody put in their resources, their expertise. And as Hannah said, we are also a Microsoft school. So we adopted Microsoft Teams as our primary platform for delivering all the lectures. We had to, of course, understand what the challenges are, not only from the teacher's side, but as well as the students, the parents, and then create the videos required for them to train themselves, a document which helps step by step to go through the instructions so that you can be quickly set up and start using the virtual classes. So the first week, of course, was a teething period, but within a week, we were able to get fully on board. The security measures which Hannah mentions are applicable to us as well, which is basically every student has his own account. And hence, when they log in, we are sure that it's the student who has logged in. We use various features of the Microsoft Teams, as well as we give flexibility to teachers to experiment, because we deal with higher education. So there are certain things which are simulated or better learned by using a tool which is already available. This can mean a simulation tool or a digital pen even. Some teachers resorted to using the whiteboard or the blackboard, but focusing the camera on the whiteboard, you can say, especially for maths, so that they can easily go through step-by-step instructions of how to solve a problem. Apart from that, we kept it a little bit flexible of what tools can be used. For example, Zoom also is available. So in some cases, when we wanted to conduct tests or exam with remote proctoring, we were able to use Zoom as well. So we left a couple of first weeks, you can say, for experimentation. And now we have stabilized, of course, for delivery using Microsoft Teams. And when needed, we resort to Zoom. We, in fact, completed all our semesters just this week. And I'm very happy to tell you that it has all gone well. As Hannah said, it's a learning experience. So a lot of positives have come out of it. In some cases, it has been more productive than being on campus. That doesn't mean that we should be in a lockdown forever. But frankly, we have learned a lot of new things as teachers as well as students. Because the first difficulty we faced was to get students on board, you can say, to buy in the idea of virtual classes. But over a few sessions, we realized that this is an essential tool as a student, as well as when you start working in the industry, because today's industries are, you can say all of them are pretty much multinational corporations, and they work at a global level. So you could be placed abroad, you could be working at a site which is far away from the headquarters, and you will be using means just like Zoom or Microsoft Teams to communicate with your supervisor or possibly a bigger team. Hence, this is a great opportunity. This is what we told our students, which is obviously true, to learn something new and make it as an effective channel of communication with your teachers and peers. So I think that's a quick summary of where we are. Of course, we can do more, and hopefully in the next few months, it's not going to be purely online. We hope to have a blended version of learning, and we will obviously do better than the previous semester. That's about me from my side. Radha, I missed the second question.
No, I didn't bring it up yet.
Okay. I'll wait for later.
That question, yes.
Thanks.
So now that you brought it up, my second question to you. When I was doing my background research for this webinar, I came across a headline. I'll just read out the headline that I came across. It's once again about Zoom. Zoom's security nightmare just got worse. This was on Forbes, and this was like about 2 days ago. Now, these are platforms that, students use. I know now Hannah mentioned that British School doesn't use it. And, you mentioned that UCL uses Microsoft Teams and certain other channels as well. But certain schools, use these platforms. And what do you think are some of the possible threats that our students might be exposed to when using such platforms?
Well, there are various threats actually, because everything that is online exposes you to a different kind of insecurity. Just talking about Zoom and Microsoft Teams itself, I think the world is divided, obviously. Some people use Zoom and some people use Microsoft Teams. It's just a matter of choice at this point, where the school or the university wants to position itself and what is the most effective. We found Microsoft Teams to be effective, but I know of other countries which use Zoom. The news clip probably which you read was of a security concern which came up immediately after the lockdowns.
Yeah.
And that is called, if I'm not mistaken, like photo bombing.
Yes.
It's like Zoom bombing,
Yes.
where people who have the meeting ID or the security code could get into a meeting without being invited. And suddenly you could have several people into your meeting, especially unwanted people, and they could be either listening in or recording things which you don't want them. However, I would say Zoom being, quite a big company and being one of their key businesses, remote web conferencing, they took immediate measures. And from what I know, they introduced the waiting room, which basically people can get in and you have to admit that person. And that worked very effectively for us when we were conducting remote exams. So we conducted exams for all the students we know, and our invigilator or the teacher was able to let people in one at a time, confirming that this is our student. So that's a good feature which they had. The other feature they had was, of course, introducing a password, which means that people who are having that password only can basically enter the meeting room. Microsoft Teams, of course, has a different approach. It's much more easier to use. It has a lot of user friendliness to it. Of course, since other Microsoft tools are integrated into it, so you could do your screen sharing, you could have notes for the meeting, you can run your PowerPoint, and various other features which are integrated, which comes along with the Microsoft suite. But in general, I would say if you are a student, teachers have their own challenges, but I'm just going to focus on the student side of it at the moment. If you are in any virtual class, irrespective of whether it's Microsoft Teams or Zoom or any other platform, I think there are certain things which you will face, especially in the early days. But since we are about 1 or 2 or 3 months into it, I think most of these problems will be ironed out by most of the schools and universities. But I'll mention about top 10, which we have come across. And I think the students probably will relate to this and how we have been able to solve this. One of the most common problem is since we suddenly got into this, and usually we see our teachers face to face, we take down notes in our notebook. We also have a policy for having your own laptop, but of course it's more effective to write something. But we were suddenly faced with using a machine, which is basically you have to rely on it. So one of the things we noticed was your laptop is too slow, or it's old and it's not supporting the e-platform system which we would like to use. So this is the first, let's say, teething issue. But this is something which is solvable quickly. So either you buy a new laptop, or you upgrade it, or you update the software, and I think within a few days, or you can seek technical support and you can bring your laptop up to speed to what is required for e-learning. The other common issue we saw, and I think everybody can relate to this, because more than driving our car, right now we are using a lot of data online, right? So lots of students quickly exhausted the data, either through the broadband or the 4G connection if they were using through a hotspot. So being disconnected because of no data or bandwidth available was another such issue which our students faced. But again, these are something which you will have to, the students were advised to work with their parents to make sure they have the required data. In Sri Lanka, unfortunately, and just before this webinar started, it was raining, and I was afraid that there will be a power outage. And I don't think it probably happens that often in some countries, but unfortunately we are facing a lot of power outages, not for a very long time, and this became a bigger challenge for us when we were conducting exams. So power vary about, and for example, losing data when power goes out. A class account being hacked, I don't think we have seen that, but this is similar to any account being hacked, which means that if you share your password with anybody and somebody knows your login, obviously they could impersonate you and just log in as if it was you. And since it's remote, and as you probably all know, most students are going to keep their video and audio off. And especially if the video is off, there's no way of knowing who is on the other side. But fortunately, this never happened. From what I know, and I did not hear any such cases from our teacher's side. But even if it did, we wouldn't know. The other problem is, of course, people forgetting their passwords. And I'll come to that a little bit later on. But we had a few cases where students forgot their passwords, and it becomes a headache because you can't start your session either. Your video and audio being on, and people doing some funny things. So I'm sure you heard about this. You could be leaving the audio on or a video on, and you're expecting that nobody's watching you, and the dog is barking in the background, or there's a parrot on the side, or your mother brings you breakfast. These are, it's part of the fun, I think, and we need to embrace that. I'm sure everybody has seen this famous video where a BBC interview was going on, and his daughter sneaked into his room along with the babysitter. But I think it was taken in good spirit, because these are challenges what work from home brings in. The other challenge which we faced essentially, which is not very technical in nature, but it's, I call it the invisible student, which means that there is a tendency, since it's supposed to be a class, the student logs in, but does something else. I think this probably didn't happen in the first few classes because there is a level of enthusiasm. Everything is new. People want to get to know each other, how this works. But as we moved along, maybe in the second or third, I would say the second month of classes, there could be students who are not that responsive in a way. So I call it an invisible student. That means you're logged in, but the interaction is very less. So the challenge on the teachers was enhanced, how to keep the students engaged. And every day, I think our teachers had to experiment with new things, how students can be brought in to say something, show some work, or assign some work, and within a few minutes correct it and send it back. So I think these are the few challenges, I would say, which were experienced by students from what I know. But if I were a student, probably there were more. For example, anything which you face in an online world, when you download something or you click on something, or your friend or your teacher sends you a document and you download it, and suddenly you get infected by a virus. And then you have to go through the regular process to make sure that it is cleaned up, possibly update your software, maybe even consult a technician, so that you're quickly on board to experiencing the virtual classes yet again at the right level as any other student. So I think in summary, Radha, these are the main challenges and security issues. Some of them are directly related to security, but some in a way related to security, what our students and teachers have faced.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Dhananjay. Moving on to Devaka. Okay, so from online learning security issues, I'm going to move into another danger zone, which is, of course, like we all know, social media. Devaka, to start off, what are the dangers of using social media?
Well, the subject can be broken into so many pieces, so I just encompass them through 5 main points. People who are the target of these things, but also adults as well, but mostly I work with youth, teens, kids. So basically there are like 5 main areas which people have to be careful about. So number 1 is people have to remember that whatever you put online, it's there forever. Even if you take it off, you can use Wayback Machine, or you can find records of it. If you do a strong enough search, or if somebody is actually IT literate, you can find anything on the web. So as an example, when I handle Lanka Comic Con, and we get a lot of complaints after the event about certain things happening, certain people contacting them without their consent. So we had one situation where one of the cosplayers was contacted by a photographer without her consent, and he wouldn't stop. So both on the victim side and on the suspect side, it is not hard to find out information about that person. So it was easy to track down the suspect. He managed to find out what her Facebook profile was, what her Instagram account was. But on the flip side, it was very easy for me to track him down. All I had to do was find his Facebook and then find out where he worked and so on and so forth. It's not very hard if you know what you're doing. And even for a beginner who doesn't know much about computers, there are a lot of there are a lot of tools you can exploit online. So, and once you do something, once you put something out there, it is never truly gone. Even on Facebook, if you delete your account for, say, some reason you want to leave social media for privacy matters or a reason that's only yours, Facebook doesn't delete your data. They keep it around for a while, just in case. They say in case you want to activate your account again and you want to come back, but it stays there for a good long while. So things never go away. So even if you want a fresh start, you have to remember whatever you posted, whatever you said, whatever comment you made, it stays on the net. It never goes away. So people have to be mindful of that. And the second point, which we see a lot of these days, is cyberbullying and harassment.
Yes.
So like Hannah said, the key to this is education. Rather than simply blocking children from accessing social media, taking away their mobile devices. And as we all know, like we know from our lives, the more you tell a young person to not do something, the more they're going to want to do it, the more curious they get. So rather than actually blocking them off social media and taking away their access, it's always best to educate them on the dangers. And when you are the target of harassment, what's most important is teaching them how to deal with it, how to react, how to respond, when to tell your parents, when to call the authorities. There is no shame in turning to somebody who knows better. Those little things have to be communicated in an effective way to youth so that they know, that they can recognize when they're being harassed or when they're being bullied, and also important when they're actually being drawn into harassment. Some of us have actually been a part of the party that's harassing another person, and we haven't realized it until it's too late. It's basically you get dragged into the drama. So we should be able to see the signs. So that is one of the biggest issues we are facing when it comes to youth in Sri Lanka. And then there's also, you take that a bit further, you get exploitation. So say there are kids, young kids, they're being targeted by much older people. There are some very dangerous people out there. If they can actually exploit you, they will exploit you. That it can be financially, it can be just plain stalking you, just plain harassing you. So being wary of strangers, that is one really, really strict rule that you have to keep. There's nothing wrong with making friends online. I mean, we live in the 20th century. Our ways of making friends have only evolved. It hasn't gotten worse or it hasn't gotten better. It's just evolved. This is just a new platform. So there's nothing wrong with making friends online or getting to meet people online. I've met some very good people online and I learn a lot from them, but it's always good to take a few precautions. And the person on the other end, I mean, if they're of the same mindset, they'll understand. There's no need to worry about them taking offense. If they're actually on board with all this, they know that you don't mean, it's nothing personal. You're just taking precautions. And you also have to keep in mind, if there is somebody set on stalking you, you have to be aware of your mobile device. So for example, if you take a photograph, those photographs are time stamped and location stamped. So unless you know about these features, you wouldn't know how to turn them off. So say a teenager takes a picture of her and her friends at a coffee shop. If I wanted to track him or her down, I could easily look at her photographs. And without knowing the location is available, if I knew what I was doing, it's very easy to track them down. So yeah, people have to be made aware of the features and functions that are available on your desktop, on your mobile devices and other devices which connect to social media, and exactly how to manage them. Sometimes you might want to say, hey, I'm here, I'm enjoying my vacation, but there are some times where you want to have a private meeting with your friends. You really do not want to be disturbed, and there are certain people you want to keep away from those meetings because it's private. You have to know when to turn off these functions, and you have to know how to. So this is where communication and education comes in. You have to tell children, you have to tell teens and youth these things and how to handle it. And even a lot of adults, like we've seen because of the current pandemic, I would say Sri Lanka has handled this situation amazingly well. Like there was no lag. Everybody shifted so fast onto online platforms. Of course, there were the usual mishaps of, there was a learning curve. There were certain problems like you mentioned before, problems with connections, power outages and all that. But I would say as a nation, we adjusted really well. Classes and schools went online, webinars started up. We only slowed down for a little bit, and we have adjusted amazingly well. We have really evolved and adapted to the situation. And because of that, it only becomes more important to educate ourselves and everybody else using these platforms on how to manage their security. And the other point that I think we're all too aware of, and I think maybe we would have also experienced it, is the envy of others. A lot of parents are experiencing this with their children. They're forever looking, and I know a couple of people who are absolutely addicted to this medium, like say Instagram, for example. They're forever looking at the Instagram celebrities and the Instagram influencers, and they wish so hard that their life was as good. They forget to actually understand the situation and realize the reality behind those pretty pictures. So the way I tackle this is like, when I get asked questions by youth, I always tell them, I never put down influencers, or I never put down people who have like a very colorful social life, but I make sure whoever asks me these questions get the proper answers. For example, if somebody tells me, look, she's living this amazing life, she's always photographed on the beach, she's always having drinks at the hottest nightclub in town, she always has the best of everything. And I'm like, look, yes, she has those things, but you have to understand that is her job. She's an influencer. So it's not like she's just doing this for free. This is her work. Full review, she has to work for everything that she gets. So it's her job. So if you want to get into that kind of job, you can, but you have to be prepared to do the work as well. So don't be fooled by the pretty pictures. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and you do not have to feel envious of those things. There are other ways of reaching your goals besides being an influencer. If you want to be an influencer, that's fine. But there are other ways of reaching those goals. And they have to understand that social media isn't real life, and it's not always a true representation of life. So the life we see in pictures is not always the life they have. We don't see the hardships they go through. We don't see the work that goes into it. So once again, education is very important. Rather than putting a child down and saying, don't indulge in that nonsense, you have to give them a reason. You have to tell them what it's all about. Because the more you block people from education, or you tell them, okay, you're not ready for this, or I'll tell you later, or don't touch this because I'm saying so, it doesn't work. Because I mean, when we were children, we know this. The more we were told not to do something, the more curious we got, and the more we wanted to see it. So it's important to remember the times when we were children and jump that obstacle and educate our children rather than blocking them from information. Very recently, another one of my friends, her daughter was targeted by, her daughter is a minor, 16-year-old. She was targeted by a man in his late 20s who got her contact details from a company database. So luckily, her parents, being the good parents that they are, they never prohibited her from having a cell phone or being on social media. They just made it a point to educate her on the dangers. So the moment the conversation got a bit dodgy, she came straight to her parents and told me, this guy is saying weird things. So they quickly took it to the authorities and the matter is sorted. But now if you were to take the phone away from her and say, this is all your fault, or you're not supposed to have a cell phone, there were a lot of comments when she went public with the situation. Most of them were saying, why do you allow your daughter to be on social media? But see, that is not the answer. You can't stop somebody from doing something. You can't keep an eye on them 24/7. It's bad. especially when it comes to kids. You know, kids also need their privacy. They need room to make their own decisions and learn. So rather than prohibiting them or blocking them from certain devices or certain platforms, education is the key. Yeah, so.
All right, okay. Thank you very much for that, Devaka. Yeah, okay. So we did discuss some of the online issues. Okay, so now that we have an idea about what's out there, how do we protect ourselves from these kind of issues? So that's going to be the topic we're going to follow in this round. Hannah, once again, I'd like to come back to you and start off with you. Since you are an educator, what sort of guidelines could you give to the teachers and all the educators out there who are using online platforms right now? You know, how can we keep ourselves safe as well as our kids, our students safe?
Yeah, thank you, Radha. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to clarify one other point from before. I have been using Zoom. We have been using Zoom for some things at the British School in Colombo. Okay. We're using Teams for almost everything, but what's missing from Teams is that large interaction that children are really, really missing. And for me, I'd normally be doing assemblies every week with 400 children, and I've really missed that as well. So each week I'm doing assemblies with 100, so each year group with 100 children, and within that I'll give them an opportunity just to say hello to everybody. We're also using Zoom with our youngest children in the early years because we can have very short sessions with them. Because I think if you limit the amount of time on systems like Zoom, there's less opportunity for things to go wrong. And we gave lots of guidance to staff and to parents about how we would be using Zoom. And that's one of the ways that we can protect ourselves as well as protect the children. And so some of the things that we'd said is that we'd make sure that children were put into a waiting room automatically. There are lots of things that you can do on Zoom in order to make sure that the meeting runs much more smoothly than it would if you didn't take these kind of precautions. We asked parents to make sure that their child was named as their first name, so that when you're accepting them coming in, you can see that it's the right children, and we know all of the children, so that made things much easier. So we weren't accepting people that we didn't know. We also mute them all on entry, which is my top tip for anybody using Zoom. If you don't know how to use the mute controls, and if you make sure that the children or the students can't unmute themselves, then that's a really, really useful tool, because everyone talking at once is a bit crazy with the different Wi-Fi connections and things. So we have been using Zoom, and teachers have been finding that because children are really missing seeing their whole class, they've been using Zoom for really short fun sessions as a class. So for example, year 2 last week, they've been learning about different countries around the world in humanities. They're 6-year-olds in year 2. They all dressed up as in the outfit from that country. They'd prepared food from that country, and then they all had their food on the session, and they all enjoyed learning about one another's countries. So it was a really nice way to learn about the world, but also see each other on Zoom and do something a bit different and a bit fun. And that's what we would do in school. They would bring in those dishes to school. So they couldn't try each other's dishes, but at least they could make one another jealous about all the things that they'd been making. So we have used Zoom, but just for really, really short sessions and just to help engage the rest of the community. And in kind of response to your question, I think if people are going to use something like Zoom, follow those guidelines, really understand whatever application you are using, really make sure you understand the security from the teacher's point of view and from the child's point of view. One of the other things we told parents was, and it might sound silly, but we said children need to be dressed appropriately, because some of the videos and things that you get back from the children, you know, during lockdown, they're in their pajamas or, you know, things like that. And so we asked people to make sure that they were appropriately dressed, because that could be a potential safeguarding issue. We record everything as well, so any sessions that we have, whether that's on Teams or on Zoom, everything gets recorded. So if we ever need to refer back to anything, we've got that as well. But in terms of just protecting people in general, I would urge any school just to make sure they have a really secure system. Using something like Teams means that you have security for your staff and for those children that are logging into it. So it's making sure you have a really secure system. And then, like all of us have said, making sure that people are as educated as possible, making sure there's enough information out there for everybody to access, and working in partnership. So educating parents and really talking to them about how they can protect their children, both from things like having too much screen time, but also making sure that they're protected in other ways, making sure they learn their passwords, they don't share that with anybody else. Using we use the common sense media curriculum, like I said at the beginning. That's really, really useful for every age student. And that, again, that educates parents as well. So really, I think it's, like I said at the start, protecting yourself online is all about educating yourself. Like Devaka was saying, you can't take things away from children. I think I'm an avid believer in letting children use certain applications once they're at the age limit. So I wouldn't want my children in the junior school to be on Facebook and things, but it's just parents being really, really aware, because I've met parents who have been surprised when I've said to them, there's been this issue in school, there's something going on WhatsApp, and the parents weren't aware of a particular group that they had belonged to. So it's really just allowing the children some freedom, like you say, but making sure that you are really, really aware of what your children are doing. We've been asking staff as well on Teams just to really keep an eye out for children from a safeguarding point of view, in terms of being active and online, whether they've suddenly stopped engaging in the learning. And we're doing morning registration as well, so we're keeping an eye on attendance, and we're contacting families if there's a sudden drop-off, just to make sure that we're kind of looking after people if they suddenly go offline. Because I think the other thing about lockdown is it has been a bumpy road. Sometimes it's been really easy for people, sometimes it's been much more tricky, and we know that that's the same for families as it is for all of us who are working in a different way to what we would normally do. So for me, making sure that you're safe is all about working in partnership with the people who are involved in the entire organisational community, and as a school leadership, making sure that you have a really secure platform.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Hannah, once again. Okay, moving on to Devaka. You're someone who's, you are an IT and computer science professional. So I think some technical information coming out from you as to how we can keep our personal information secure would be very helpful at this point of time. What are the different mechanisms, we could use to keep our personal information safe and secured?
Well, like Hannah and Dr. Dhananjay said, the platforms such as Zoom and Google Hangouts, which is now Google Meet, they have their own safeguards set in there. You can even make meetings private, where people can't join unless they're allowed. Like now on Google Meets, you might have noticed, you have to ask to join the meeting. You can't just join it. Only when the admin or the host allows you, can you join. And Zoom has the same features. And if we were keeping an eye on the news when the pandemic hit, we do remember a little bit of drama over Zoom, saying they were being routed through certain servers. There were certain security exploits, but Zoom took care of it pretty well. So one thing I would like to tell people is to get involved. There are certain feedback forms and things when you use software. We should make use of them, because the more information we give back to the developer, the more developer is aware of the faults in the software, and they quickly patch them up. We are very fast to we don't read through disclaimers. I mean, I don't blame anybody. I don't read through disclaimers. And we say, I agree, we start using the software. Nobody wants to read all that. But once in a while, it's good to just touch on a few points. Like, for example, if you're worried about who is allowed to use your contact details or your email address, just read that part. And I mean, how many of us have experienced in the morning, say we have a chat with one of our colleagues and we say we like chocolate-filled donuts. By evening or by afternoon, we see ads. We see Google ads all over the pages that we've surfed for chocolate-filled donuts, and not just that, it covers all the sweets. Now, I'm a chocolate fan, and I have actually seen this happen, right? Yeah, so that's the thing. So there are certain mechanisms in place where you can actually opt out of these things, but you have to be aware of it. And in this case, this is you educating yourself. So it's good that we take a little time to read through what kind of software we are installing, check on the ratings on Google Market, the App Store, and even on the Apple App Store. There are ratings, there are reviews. It does well to go through those things and see what complaints people have. Sometimes a lot of people would have commented saying there is a loophole here and the developer wouldn't have paid attention, but that matters to you. It's your privacy at risk. So having a look through that benefits you. And as for, if say browsing, social media, I would say keep an eye on your mobile. And I've noticed a lot of people, when it comes to social media, they pay a lot of attention to the very elaborate security measures you can take, but they actually ignore the really simple ones. So for example, if I want to break into social media, with my experience and maybe a little bit of knowledge and research, I could probably find a tool that would break into your email, then I would get your email address and then break into your social media, then I would lock you out of your social media and so on and so forth. But why would I do that? Why would I go to all that trouble if I can just make friends with you, Radha, and look over your shoulder when you type in your password?
Yes.
Yeah, it's called shoulder surfing. So yeah, this pandemic has taught me a lot of young people words. So shoulder surfing. Yeah. Young people words, yeah. So shoulder surfing actually made its appearance mainly when you're using your bank card at ATMs. Now for a fast eye, you keep an eye on somebody who types in their PIN number at the ATM. You're in control of quite a few things, yeah? And say you snap a pic over the shoulder of his credit card, you've got his number. Now there's nothing to stop me from meeting you at a coffee shop, having a little conversation, walking around you, pretending to do something and snapping a pic over your shoulder. And if I have your password, chances are your password on Facebook has a lot to do with your password on Instagram. Maybe there's a button. If I change a few things here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for Instagram, I could easily break into a lot of things. So it's good that we pay attention to the elaborate ways of breaking in, but also pay attention to simple things. If friends are really your friends, they'll understand in you being a little paranoid, because social media and the web is something that we can no longer be off of. You can opt out of a few social media platforms, but in this day and age, social media, the website, the net is part of our life.
Exactly.
To lock ourselves out would also mean locking out the advantages of being online. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of things you can learn. Now, for example, I am an IT professional by qualification, but my branding and my designing, I'm self-taught. So back in the day, we didn't have as many resources, but as many resources became available online, my learning just became faster and faster and faster. So it would be a shame to miss out on all those things simply because, we didn't take proper precautions at the beginning just to safeguard certain platforms that we use. That's when it comes to social media. Facebook and Instagram offer certain things like a 2-step verification feature. I would say make use of those things. For parents and children, I absolutely agree with Hannah. There are some platforms that, it's wise to not let children on them until they are of a responsible enough age to understand what they're getting into and what they should protect themselves against. So there are certain software, some of them which are paid, and you can install them on mobiles, you can install them on tablets, you can install them on desktops, and you can initiate parental controls and you can control what your child has access to. I myself know some very close families where the passwords of the children, I think they are 13 to about 15, 16, but they do share their passwords with their parents just so that the parents once a month can just check in and see, what's going on. It's basically like a device and, online contract between the children and them. They're all in agreement that this is what is needed right now to keep themselves safe and keep the family safe. So once they come of a certain age, like 18 and all that, then they can have their privacy. But yeah, that's a very wise thing to do. Parental controls should actually be made use of. There are very handy tools out there. And going back to my previous point of seeing, supposing you discuss something and in the night you see a whole lot of ads, you're bombarded with ads. If you want to stop your data being mined, there is software for that as well. For one example, there's a browser. Most of us are using Chrome or Internet Explorer or Firefox, but there are a whole lot of browsers out there which actually have a lot of software built in to combat data mining and unauthorized grabbing of your search history, your online activities. For example, there's this browser called Brave.
Okay.
So I was introduced to this browser. My current project, which I'm wrapping up soon, is I'm doing this massive business directory for a IT governing body in Sri Lanka. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of very sensitive information on that website. So the people working on it have to be online a lot, my developers as well as the clients who are monitoring our progress. So a lot of us are using this particular browser because this browser has built-in features to combat pop-ups, to take out ads, unauthorized grabbing of data. It actually shows you in the top left corner or the right corner exactly how many things they blocked, how much malware they blocked, how much unauthorized grabbing of data they blocked. Okay. So later on, you can browse through them and see exactly where your data is being mined without your knowledge, and you can see the risks. So yeah, that's a good browser to actually explore. So the tools are available. All we need to do, as Hannah mentioned before, is we need to educate ourselves on how it works, explore the full suite of features that it allows us, because the features are already there. Chances are we have not explored them or we are not aware of them. And as for children, teens, and youth, there are a ton of tools out there which allow parental controls. So yeah, even the simplest of measures, like right now I'm using a MacBook to have this meeting with you all. There is absolutely no issue in slapping a piece of black tape over the camera pinhole. I mean, even Mark Zuckerberg does that. There was an interview once and there was a computer behind him and it has a piece of black tape over the camera. So if he's very aware of what can be exploited, I think we should be aware of it as well. With a little bit of effort, it takes very little for me to turn on the camera on your phone. So that's why you should be aware of what apps you're using. Look at reviews, look at the rating on the app stores before you install something. I know sometimes a game can be very, very tempting, or maybe a piece of software that makes your professional life easier can be very, very tempting. But you really have to orient yourself on what exactly you are installing on your mobile device, because mobile devices are only going to get more and more intrusive as time goes on. And I use the word intrusive. I mean the things that we are not aware of. Mobile devices and computers and PCs and tablets, I mean, they are necessary right now. It's a part of our life. So it only, it's only wise that we are aware of what we are doing. So tools, parental controls, choosing a good browser that does all the work for you and blocks malware, maybe a good antivirus on your current PC. And I do suggest sometimes not always using free versions which don't have all the features. Pay a little bit so that you don't suffer later on. A lot of antiviruses have a lot of focus on ransomware right now, which actually holds the data on your computer for ransom. That's a huge problem right now, and it has reached Sri Lanka.
Is this double locker? Is that what you're talking about, or is this something else?
Sorry, which?
Is it double locker? There was this ransom virus going on. Is it the same thing?
Well, recently some of our banks had a problem.
Okay.
And a well-known garment factory in Sri Lanka also had a problem.
Oh, right. Okay. So this was for Android phones, I think.
From what I heard, this information, I think it's just hearsay.
Yeah.
I think it came off the PCs. So
right.
Yeah. So there are several versions of softwares. Like I was talking to you about the Brave browser. It can be installed on your mobile as well as your PC and your Mac. So likewise, ransom available on tablets, it's available on PC and Mac. Nobody is safe. If it gets installed on your computer, chances are you will lose data and it will be held for ransom. And there's no guarantee that even if you pay up, you'll get it back. it'll probably be used against you over and over again. So you have to take certain precautions, just the basics, like antiviruses, firewalls. Pay a little bit now so that you don't suffer later, and orient yourself on all the features and functions that are available. And if you're using it, maybe you're okay with a few features and functions because you're aware of the dangers, maybe you can knock it off. But if you have children, if you're dealing with students, you have to understand that they might not have the time, or they might not exactly understand what they're reading when they go through the agreement section of a software or piece of software. So if you if you turn on parental controls and you turn off a few features and functions and access to a few features and functions, that is prudent.
Okay.
So yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Devaka, for that. And because you mentioned passwords and the importance of it, I actually came across this interesting quote, and I think it's good to share it with all of you and with everyone who's watching us right now. It's pretty interesting. Treat your password like your toothbrush. Don't let anybody else use it, and get a new one every 6 months. I mean, I think it perfectly sums up how important it is to have your password to yourself, to keep it to yourself, just like you mentioned, Devaka.
Yeah, but rather also one thing you have to keep in mind is, if I was a close friend of yours and I knew what you like, say you like your cat, it's very easy for me to guess what your password is. All I have to do is know you well. So as an example, there's a website called Free Random Password Generator. So you can choose exactly how many characters, how many special characters, how many uppercase characters, how many special characters, like underscores and the @ sign. It will generate you a completely random password, which is very hard to figure out. Now, those are the passwords I use on my social media.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are very hard to figure out because, I mean, if somebody knows me well, and, you know, Colombo is a small place, speaking locally. If I knew you very well, I could just think of the things that you like or the things that you're partial to, and I could probably figure out your password. And if I figure out one password, there'll always be a pattern. I can probably figure out your next password as well. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah. So for all of you out there, when you come up with a password, choose a very strong password. I think that would help, just like you said, right? Okay, so moving on to Dr. Dhananjay. Devaka mentioned some of the mechanisms we could use to keep our personal information secure on certain platforms and on social media. There are also some cyber security, cyber data security softwares available out there. Do these softwares actually guarantee 100% security for our personal information and data?
Wonderful question, Radha. Just before I answer that, I just wanted to touch something which Hana and Devaka mentioned, that was to improve the e-learning experience. We learned that very few basic things can be used to tell the students and parents. This can be as simple as, you know, everybody's not very tech savvy, and some people are just taking the first computer class, and some parents are obviously not that computer savvy. So what I would like to say is, this is some advice which my father gave me when I got my first computer. This was way back in, I wouldn't tell you the year, but let's just say I was, 14 years old. If you really look at that age at which you first access your computer or a laptop, that has gone down now. Actually, it's gone way down because it, I think, goes down by a year every 2 years. So 14 became 13, 12, 11, 10. And as early as 5 or 6 year olds now are on their iPads. So as you can see, long time back, there used to be 15 or 16, you used to get your first computer, but that age has gone down now. So just to improve that experience of e-learning, the easiest thing to do when you face a problem, it should be security or anything else related, identify it early and try to seek support. I don't think everybody can solve all problems. So try to seek support and consider the options which are available and choose the best option, whether it's antivirus you have to install, or maybe even change your laptop, or maybe it's a very quick fix, but choose the best option and sort it out as quickly as possible. I think you mentioned data as well, Devaka. I compare data to oil, basically. Data essentially is like petrol in a car when you're dealing with e-learning. you have to safeguard it. You have to plan, reduce the usage, and also monitor it quite regularly. And most importantly, have a backup if you are going on a long drive. So what it essentially means is guard your data as much as possible. You can do simple things as well. We face some students having a problem of laptop being not charged and stuff. So keep your things charged all night. And in the morning when you need to use not only one device, but multiple devices. So for example, Microsoft Teams as well as Zoom, I have set it up on my laptop as well as my Android phone. So just in case my laptop is being used by my kids or it's ran out of battery, for example, I can access the same services through my phone. And so they're simple things. And as a student, I think if they are actively involved, as a teacher, I think the challenges are many, but as a student, you're a listener. So as much as possible, if you are actively involved, ask questions, pay attention to the work which was assigned, use that opportunity to go back and forth with your teacher. I think that improves the learning experience. I think the second thing I wanted to touch upon was Devaka was mentioning about social media and how its misuse can affect and in fact get people into trouble. This was way back when I was trying to, I think teaching a security class, and a couple of these problems came up. This applies to teenagers as well as adults. There was this famous case in Brazil where especially girls, I think, or kids from wealthy families were posting every Friday or Saturday night where they were going for clubbing and where they would be meeting. And there was a gang who would stalk them because they would know their status updates every night, where they would show up and in fact what they would be wearing. So this ended up in basically the gangs kidnapping them or asking them for money. And eventually the police found out, but because all this information was available in their status updates. And in fact, nowadays you can use the cell phones to track, or as Devaka said, there would be pictures in which your date and time is mentioned. So everybody who posts a picture, either on Facebook or Instagram, has to be very careful. And there are real cases. This happened about 6 years back. And now I think it's very much possible as well. The second thing I think is adults also do this. I see a lot of my own friends do it. I never do it, is check-in. We go in somewhere and there is a feature in Facebook or Instagram saying check-in. But you can check this out right now if you want. There's a website called Please Rob Me. Okay, please rob me. Houses are empty where people could go and check in and check into their house, in fact. Of course, it is not done to actually help burglars. It's actually an awareness website, which means that if somebody knows, especially your neighbor, that you're the only person living in that house and you have checked in, let's say in a hotel in Kandy, and you live in Colombo, so obviously your house is empty. So there is the incentive for a lot of burglars to just break into your house because you have publicly announced you're not at home. So we need to be very, very careful about this. Just wanted to add that and come back to your question about the various types of softwares or antiviruses which are available these days. Frankly, there are plenty. And I did some research as part of a class to see what is out there. Well, the basic advice is when you buy a new laptop or a computer, you better ask your vendor if they come with a pre-installed version. Each of these antiviruses or softwares have different features. They are designed to detect spyware, spam, ransomware is very difficult, and various types of viruses, which we should agree and accept that it's always one step ahead. So as an antivirus company, if you take Norton or Kaspersky or Trend Micro, I mean, they're always one step behind. Just like the COVID-19, we don't know when it's going to hit us. The step behind very regularly so that the signature, as it is said, is caught by this antivirus if they were aware of this antivirus. But we have to all accept that it's going to be one step ahead of us. Of course, investing, the companies at a personal level, as Devaka said, we should invest a little bit to see that, because they won't have the full feature set. For companies and corporates or schools, of course, we should be investing and set aside a certain budget for the security of our systems, because when you pay, you will get more features in any antivirus software which is available. There are about 7 or 8 which are very popular, and I can rattle off a few names. These are in no particular order because I don't work for any of them, but people must have heard of these names. Bitdefender, which has a lot of features. Obviously, there is Norton antivirus, which has been around for a while. Kaspersky is very famous in Sri Lanka. Trend Micro. There's also WebRoot, Secure Anywhere antivirus system. There's Avast, Sophos, and most of the Windows operating systems are installed with the endpoint or the ESET antivirus. I've heard a different story as well. Some people are saying that since most of our data is, and the emails are hosted on the cloud is taking care of the security of your data. Unless it comes to your personal computer, you don't need to worry too much. And hence, the Windows Defender, which is available with most Windows systems, some say is good enough. But what I would say is that although all these softwares and antivirus softwares, you can say, are installed, it finally comes down to, just like we are experiencing with COVID-19, is some good habits. If we don't have the good habits, no matter what you install, if you keep clicking on links, downloading things, installing freeware, and not being careful about your own computer, I don't think it works. So the basic good practices include, as much as possible, have multi-factor authentication, which means that if your phone as well as your laptop has a fingerprint recognition system as well as a password locking system, use both. Try to encrypt your data. Use a strong password, as Devaka and Hana was saying. There are different ways to generate good passwords, not your pet's name and the birth date. That's very common. In fact, research showed the top 3 passwords in the world are: number 1, password; number 2, ABC123; and the third one probably your own name and your birth date. So we need to avoid these common mistakes. We should also try to get software and apps from official app stores and not just download it from some random website. We should pay whenever possible, because there is no such thing as free lunch. And we should try to avoid cracked or hacked software, which is, I mean, there is a tendency to use it. Frankly, I've done it when I was a kid. I don't do it anymore. Sometimes there's a need to use something and use a hacked version, but we don't know what is out there. We also need to be very careful that we don't lose our data. I think a lot of people forget that unless you're faced with a situation. So back up your data as much as possible. So use a separate hard drive or on USB, but also back up your data as much as possible. And the most important thing, which I think if you're active on social networking and not an influencer, is what you share on the website. So, I mean, I don't think you will disagree with me. I do a lot of hirings, and every time a new person applies, it's so easy to type this person's name in Google or even on Facebook and check what this person is about. In fact, in some forms in the US, I've heard that you have to actually mention your Facebook account as well as a LinkedIn profile name.
Yes.
All these things are in place because the world is moving very rapidly. And if you have a history of things which does not match with the company or the organization's culture, then the company sees you as a threat and may not want to recruit you. And we have seen some real cases in Sri Lanka where just one weak link can disrupt the whole company. I think this happened 1 year back. I don't want to take any names, but at least it's basically one link which we can disrupt the whole operation. Which brings back to what my father said when he bought me my first laptop. And he said, guard this laptop or the computer as if this is the only weapon you have in the battlefield to survive. And I didn't really get it what he said. But as days went by, I realized actually if I am going to be a computer scientist and this is going to be my device, just like a doctor needs all his devices, we have to guard it. So my room was messy, frankly. I had guy in a room we don't take care of. My clothes everywhere. But my laptop was always clean and it was always functional. And it was for us, we use so many devices, but if we can guard it as if that's the most important thing, especially during e-learning, because if you are faced with the exam tomorrow, definitely you don't want your laptop to be frozen. So I think those are the few points which I wanted to mention with respect to the cyber and data security software which you were talking about, Radha.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Dhananjay. All right. So I think that concludes our second round. So we spoke about how to keep ourselves secure when using online platforms, websites, social media, and e-learning. All right. So let's move into the last stage of the webinar. Okay, I've got just a few questions. Some of the people who watched us on Facebook has texted me, so I'll just pick some of the questions that I've got. Okay. There is one question asking, how can we protect ourselves from hackers? Devaka, would you like to add in a little bit more? Because yeah, since this question just came in, I think it'll be a bit rude to avoid it. You did mention about it, how to keep your personal information and all that safe, but if you could add a little bit more to it.
Okay, so there's a little list that people might want to make and run through. So hackers, the thing is, as Dr. Dhananjay mentioned, antiviruses are sometimes a step ahead or a step behind, because the moment an antivirus improves, a hacker improves, and every time a hacker improves, the antivirus patches over that. So on and so forth. So no system is 100% secure, but there's a list of things that you can run through just to make it that much harder. And hackers are not a group which are, unless they're elite hackers who want to make a name for themselves and you're a big corporation, they're not very interested in hacking into something that is not really worth their while. So I would say, if you want to protect your machine and your mobile against hackers, pick a good antivirus software. Not every famous brand is a good antivirus. I myself use an antivirus called Panda. It doesn't rate high on the famous brands, but if you look at the brands that are recommended by IT people, Panda is very high. So I use that. Choose a good antivirus. Then protect yourself against identity theft. Lock down your social media, the social media that you use on your PC or on your mobile. If you don't consider it a nuisance, choose not to auto log in. You might have to enter your username and password every time you want to have a look at your social media, but there is one layer of security you're adding to your devices. Optimize your passwords. Use random password generator and make passwords so hard that it's really, really hard to guess. Using the website that I mentioned before, that's one thing. Then use a VPN if you want to keep your location secure. If you have I think a lot of people are familiar with VPNs. I think after Sri Lanka blocked Facebook once, I think the youth was using VPNs left, right, and center. And
everyone.
Everyone, right? So the thing is, you can actually be in Sri Lanka and make your mobile look like it's in Germany. So you can use a VPN for anonymous browsing. If you don't want people knowing where you are, turn off your GPS, turn off your auto tagging on Facebook and Instagram. You can also deactivate the auto login feature on your desktops. Like most of us do this because it's a nuisance to always log into our mails. So we just say, oh yeah, autofill, but you can turn that off. I mean, supposing our device falls into somebody else's hands, it makes it that much harder. Use private browsing modes, both the Brave browser, the Tor browser, and even Chrome gives you the feature where you can browse on a private window. It won't save your data. So you can use that option. Then as Dr. Dhananjay mentioned, use only verified sites, well-known sites. Don't go into these flaky sites that offer you free downloads and free access to hack software. You're opening yourself up to a lot of ransomware and malware. Always look for at the top of the address where it says .com. Always look for what the line that says HTTPS. So that means it's a secure link. It's a secure site. It has a SSL certificate. Then make sure all your social media accounts are private. Use two-step authentication. Facebook actually gives you the option to name 4 or 5 friends who can help you recover your account if your account is hacked into. You can make use of those things. Just to choose a few, trusted people who can help you log back in. Then always remember to log out. Say you visit a net cafe. Net cafes are not a thing these days, but supposing you use somebody else's computer, supposing a student uses a computer in college or at a net cafe, or supposing a friend borrows your phone or you have to borrow their phone to log into something, always log out. Make sure you know what you're logging into. Make sure you log
Technical issues, I guess.
Beware of spam emails. Don't click on every link that comes to you. If you don't recognize the sender, delete. So beware of free Wi-Fi and hotspots. Of course, if you have a firewall and antivirus and all the other precautions taken, you're a little bit safer. And in general, keep an eye on your devices. Don't let people look over your shoulder. Don't log in when you're close to people. Don't look at your personal, private data when you're in a crowd, say in a bus and you're surrounded by people, or if you're in a nightclub and you're surrounded by people. Don't log in. Don't check your bank balance. Simple steps.
All right.
That's
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Devaka. Some of the questions are again related to the same area, so I'm not going to bring them up once again. There's just one question, and we'll make it the last question for today. How has internet affected the way we think? Anna and Dr. Dhananjay, if you could add a little bit to this question. I'll repeat it once again. How has the internet affected the way we think? Hannah, do you want to go ahead, first of all?
I think there's just so much information out there, isn't there? It's incomprehensible, the amount that you can find on the internet. I think people quite often mistake that if they type in a search for something. In terms of researching things, we have to do a lot of work with some of our older children about how to research something properly, because you could type something into Google, it gives you a whole heap of answers. You click on the first one and you automatically assume that everything that's written there is right. I think it's really changed the way we have to think about the information that's out there, because it's not necessarily true. And making sure that you are going to verified sites, like Devaka was just saying, making sure you've got the padlock sign at the top of your URL bar at the top, making sure that you are really researching, and making sure that if you're looking at something, maybe you verify it 2 or 3 times in other places as well. From that respect, I think the internet has made us think really differently. For me, it's just mind-blowing. Technology means that I can post something and millions of people around the world could see what I'm posting. If you're putting something on YouTube especially, or on Facebook, there is such a wide audience that it has to make us think really carefully about what we are posting and the information that it's out there. The great thing about the internet is that there is so much information that it's accessible just at our fingertips, and things like online textbooks, all of our online learning, we haven't needed to have physical books for the children. We've been able to find things online or download texts instead. And I think that's really changed our whole thinking about things as well. Potentially, online learning could revolutionize lots and lots of things. In terms of the world of education, I'm not sure whether we'll have home learning again that requires a book. Hopefully we can just continue to post that through Teams, even once we're back in physical school. And from that respect, we've got forests being cut down, especially that's a huge problem in Sri Lanka, and the internet and technology does provide us with some of the answers for us becoming greener and much more conscious about how we're treating our planet. So from that respect, I think it's had to make us think really differently about how we treat the information on the internet, but it can be a really positive thing as well.
Thank you, Hannah. Dr. Dhananjay, if you could add a little bit.
I think I agree with Hannah. We basically have entered the information age, just like we had the copper age, or the iron age, the ice age. No, that was a movie, I'm sorry. But we live in an information age, and it's all designed to make our lives better. Nobody invents anything to make our lives worse. However, we have to be careful. There could be an information explosion in a way that suddenly we get hit by so much information we don't know what to choose. And thanks to Google, of course, it's ranked. But at the fingertips, we have this information available these days. I remember a long time back when I applied for my first library membership. This was the British Council Library in my hometown, Pune, in India. And there was a 6-month wait period. And when I got my library membership for the British Council Library in Pune, I was so excited. I asked my parents, my name has come up, please give me the money to go and apply for this membership and get my card. That was after a 6-month wait. However, now it's just a click of a button, anything you want. If you want to look for an article or a previously published magazine or a research paper, and even all books in PDF forms are available online, it's just a click of a button. So as you can see, life has become way better after introduction of the internet and computers, and so many things have become so much easier than going and waiting for many months or years, in fact. But we have to be careful. As with any invention, there will be challenges, and most of it actually we discussed here. But in summary, I would like to say that teachers and parents play a very important role. I have 2 small kids myself, and I know how this can become more and more challenging as years progress, because more and more things are available at the fingertips. Suddenly something can pop up. Suddenly somebody will be stalking, or somebody will be showing something where a small kid gets more attracted to and follows that path. So these challenges will always exist, and these threats can never go away. But as parents and teachers, I think it becomes our responsibility in a way. And I think thanks to Devaka, I realized the more you help your own students and kids and establish this relationship, just like a friend, the more time you spend with them and the more they open up to you, rather than we going after youngsters saying, please tell me what happened. I think that's a great solution for us to achieve what the information age can actually do for us. There is no end to this. I think as we heard last week, there was the SpaceX shuttle launched with 2 astronauts after such a long time. So as it says, it's all ties up in digital technology, information age. It will take us places, but we have to be very careful.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Dhananjay. Okay. So we are about to wrap up this webinar, but I'd like to get a final message from all of you. Let's keep it short. Hannah, you could take up the lead.
Thank you, Radha. I think for me, online safety, like I've said throughout this webinar, it's all about us having a partnership and making sure that education is there, and we can do our bit as a school and make sure that the education is there for parents and children. But we have to work as a partnership. And that would be my key message. I also can I just ask, they've all been on board and everyone has gone over and above, and I can't thank them all enough.
All right, thank you, Hannah. Devaka?
Well, in closing, I would just like to say cyber security and keeping people and yourself safe from harassment and keeping your data and your devices safe is actually not rocket science. In this day and age, you have the tools. It's just a matter of educating yourself and educating the people around you. And as I mentioned, when dealing with youth and teens, it's always better to present yourself as their ally. If you're quick to confiscate or if you're quick to dole out punishments, that is not good communication. If you can actually show them that they're on their side and you're only there to share your information, be their ally and help them stay safe, it's a better approach. They communicate better with you, you communicate better with them, and who knows, I mean, even adults have a lot to learn from children these days. They do surprise us a lot. So yeah, good relationships, good communication, and self-awareness, teaching yourself and keeping constantly in touch with the emerging trends and the ways you can protect yourself is very important. We have YouTube, we have Google, we have in the palm of our hands, we have a supercomputer. So rather than looking at cat video all days, we can take 5 minutes out of our busy schedule and, have a look at a few webinars such as this, a few documentaries, and stay up to date on what's happening and how we can protect ourselves. And we should share that information, and we should get involved. Once in a while, fill in a form. Tell the developers, this is what's wrong with your software. This is a security hole. This is what you can do to patch it up. Share, collaborate, and basically be there for each other.
Awesome. Okay. Dr. Dhananjay, if you could also add in a final message.
Yeah, Radha, I think Devaka and Hana have pretty much summarized what we spoke, but I'll focus my last few words on virtual classes. I think most of the schools are wrapping up for the year and probably new semesters will begin. But what I've learned is if anybody wants to have a really good experience with virtual classes and also remain secure, is practice the 3 S's, what I call. So that's manage your start, which is the first S. So begin on a positive note and try to be engaged with your teachers as much as possible. The second S is managing your stress. Well, it's not easy because I think the teachers and students have made a big transition. I think it's going well so far, but new things will come up, new things, new ways of learning as well. So at the same time, people are not getting out as much, but with the easing of the restrictions maybe. So get as much as sleep as possible and just reduce your stress. So managing your stress is the second S. And the third one is being a little bit more self-disciplined. That is the third S, self-discipline. So attend your classes. The teachers have put in a lot of hard work to prepare the materials to bring these services to all students. So attend classes, participate in the required work which is to be done. And I think if all students and teachers can focus on these 3 S's, which I'll just repeat, is have a good start, manage your stress, and have some self-discipline. I think I have to accept I have to work on all 3 of them. But if we can all follow those, I think it will be a great learning experience. And as we have discussed earlier, a great opportunity to learn new things by the time we come out of this pandemic, and in fact come out stronger than what we were earlier. So that would be my final message, Radha. And thanks a lot to your team for organizing this webinar. I learned a lot out of it. And I'm sure a lot of hard work is going behind the scenes. So thanks to both of you and Michelle and her team.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dhananjay. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Devaka. And thank you, Dr. Dhananjay. Thank you for sparing the time to talk about a very timely topic. Thank you very much once again. And thank you to all of those of you who joined with us. Hope this was a productive 1.5 sessions. Just before I conclude things from my side, let me just leave you with this message. Devaka brought in this in the very first round. None of the data that you post online ever goes away. So think twice before you press enter. Parami, over to you to sign out.
Okay, thank you guys. As Radha just said, thank you so much for taking the time, and this was a very informative panel, and I'm sure everyone learned a lot. Right before we sign out, a shout out to our partner UCL, and we will be having more webinars in the future, and have a good evening to all of you.